Okay, here we go. So I originally organized this event, and I decided to call it Demystifying Data-Driven Sales. And the reason I did that was because I really had no idea what data-driven sales means. I kind of still really don't, right? Because it's such a broad term. So what I wanted to do with this event was showcase my own ideas of what I've learned about data-driven sales and how we do it in a very, very practical way. Not any fuss, and just talk about the specific things we do, and mostly ideas more than techniques, because you just should feel free to implement your own techniques. So mostly the ideas about data-driven sales. So a little bit about me. My name is Oscar. So my title is Integrations at Cluedin, and that's basically a title I've gotten because I started working as an engineer, and then now I'm doing kind of sales. But I like to call myself an integration consultant. Not really because it sounds cool, because it doesn't, but because I see myself as helping with the companies that we talk with, getting the most out of their tools and the most out of the data they already have in their companies. So there's my email. So I really like data. I did beforehand, but I really started to see the use case for data with how we're using it at Cluedin, and the way as I'm talking with the companies we're talking with about how they're using data. And what I really hate is unused data. The amount of data the companies already have in their tool sitting that they're not using. I hate it this much, as you can see in that picture. So I come from an engineering background, and that's the thing. I'm an engineer. I love technology. I just so happen to be selling, I think, because that's mostly because I'm very passionate about the field I'm in and the product, but also because I think engineering and sales is really not that different. So my mission with today's event was that using the tools and data that already exists within your organization to improve your sales. So there's a really long way from just having the data to actually using it, right? You'll see people who have a ton of data in their Excel sheets, and they might have 1,000 really, really good, solid leads, but it's not only what it's about. So I come up with 3 cornerstones of data-driven sales. I've got some help, I've gotten some inspirations from some other players, but this is my idea of what ideas you need to have to be doing data-driven sales. So the first one is the data quality, which is, to me, the most important part, and it's probably what I'm going to focus the most on, and it's what I know the most about. Then is how connected the data is. That's why I'm going to talk a little bit about the technologies that exist right now, because there's happening so much in this space that it's almost impossible to keep up. So try to give a little bit of an overview of kind of the technologies that we're using and we're helping other companies use to connect their data better. And then we're going to talk a little bit about how the sales team in reality use the data. And that might actually be, the most important part of all of this, because it doesn't really matter how good your sales stack is if your sales team aren't using it properly. But that's also the most difficult part for you to solve. Okay, so what is quality data? So I've got this quote. This is from the 1980s. It's made by the OECD. So this is part of a bigger document you wrote on the principle of what good data and how we should treat data in the modern world. So this entire document is what a lot of modern legislation about data is built on. And one of the core principles is the data quality principle. So data quality is really, really important. The new GDPR that's coming from the EU is also based on some of this, and that's really, really important. I'm going to get back to that. So how OECD thinks of really good quality data is it's supposed to be accurate, complete, and kept up to date. So that's the thing I focus the most on, and that's the thing we really focus on with the data we use. So the do's and don'ts that any company should have when they want to do data-driven sales. So it would be Tim was saying this, you should really always have your data in one place. That's the thing, that's what you want to do. You should definitely use really high quality enrichment providers that will help enrich this data that you have in one place. It'll be really easy if it's only one place. And something very practical, you should have a share first culture, right? If somebody has something, you should always share it. It should always be open for everybody else to use. You should not have to ask for a Google Drive document. You should just have it shared with you. Then there's the don'ts. So a lot of the data you can get right now is really crappy, and it's kind of illegal actually, or soon it will be. And I'm talking about the companies that are scraping LinkedIn. That's a real gray area, but we're going to get back to it. And then there's the big thing that's relating to the very first thing introduced, as that's the tool fragmentation. So all these are great, right? It would be amazing to have all your data in one place. But the problem is that in reality, people don't use one single super CRM. They use the tools they want to use. People use, some guy might use Google Drive for notes, some guy might use Evernote, some guy might use Evernote, right? That's super annoying because some guy might have his leads in an Excel sheet on his laptop. That's terrible, right? But that's really okay because employees should have the freedom to use whatever tools they want, even in big organizations, because I will always guarantee that any employee will do their job better if they choose the tools themselves and not if they're forced to use a huge, terrible CRM like Salesforce. And so this is easy to do in a small company, right? You just set up a CRM and, oh, do you have the lead for this? Do you have that? That's easy. You can ask if your sales team, like 5 people, like something like what we are. That's not that bad. But the real key thing is we want to implement something like this in big organizations. That's the difficult part of it. So quality data is more important than ever, right? So the first quote I had from the OECD about data quality, the legislation GDPR is actually based on that document. So if your data, if you don't have quality data, meaning that your data is fragmented, meaning that if I go to you as a company and say, what information do you have on me? If the only thing to say, well, we have this and we might have something in this CRM and I think we have some over here, that's not good enough. This is actually defined and you will be able to be fined by the EU in a little over 200 days that will take effect. So it's really serious, and it's not only required now to make good sales, it's actually also required now to be to comply with the legislation. So the solutions here, there's a lot of solutions. So migration consultants, there's a lot of people out now that most major companies have people working specifically with GDPR trying to solve this, right? That's great. If you hire some really smart consultant, he's probably going to be able to solve this in maybe a year, right? And it's going to be really, really expensive. Then there are software like MuleSoft and Delboomi. They're awesome and really customizable, but they require a lot of IT work. This is something where we have an entire development team working on this just to connect all the data. And a lot of companies are using these. Then for small companies or people that might not want to take these drastic steps, can use small automation tools. That can usually be done by one developer in the company or somebody who's smart with technology, like Zapier and Microsoft Flows. That will probably not have you comply with the GDPR, but it will help a lot with opening up the data flow in your company. Okay, so what's the next part? The next part is to connect the data. And really, connecting the data is also key because that's really a big step from going from just having a good amount of data on your customers to really being a data-driven company. Because to make good database decisions, you need to have the data connected. So what in reality does having all of your data connected means? That means that all relevant information is displayed to you in one place. And you see this is a recurring word, having it in one place. So here I'm specifically meaning that if you're looking at a person, at a lead, you can not only see his contact information and where he works, you can also see the people in the company who's already been in contact with him, the people that are related to him, and all the ties he had, the past companies he's worked at. And then you can click through all of them, kind of like a web of information instead of just an Excel sheet. So right now, this is where the really interesting technological stuff is happening. There are so many new technologies that can improve connecting data. So the main one that we use a lot and that we're cooperating with is Neo4j, which is a graph database which is very specifically connecting the data. Then there's also machine learning and Elasticsearch, which is more of analyzing the data and using it. And machine learning, we have an entire user group on that once a month, and if you come to that for 2 years, you might understand 10% of it. That's a huge part of it, and that's something that in 10 years, that's going to be going things on with machine learning and the lead generation right now that we can't even imagine. So actually using the data. So this is the one that's the most difficult, right? So data is not really data, right? It's not useful. You can buy a bunch of data from enrichment services, but it's not really going to increase your sales in any way. What is going to increase your sales is that you make it part of the workflow. If you have good connected, high quality data, not only making a sale is so much more than just having the contact information. What you want is you want the sales rep to be able to have all relevant information in and look for an entire company that he's selling to and make good decision based on the connected data you have. Which person should I contact? Does Gary that works at IT have a cousin that works here? Right? That's really crucial information, and almost nobody has this. So that's the really tricky part. But if you can have high quality connected data and you can implement it in a workflow, then you're set up for a really solid data-driven sales team. So the lessons learned. So I'm gonna put one for each point, right? So quality data is not only really important to making good sales, it's really important to actually comply with the law. New technologies are really changing how we're connecting data right now. That's something to really pay attention to because there's so much happening in this space. Technologically for sales, this is the space to watch, I would say, and pay a lot of attention to. And then data just needs to be an integral part of the team's workflow. It shouldn't just be looking up on videos, right? Data should to be used for every decision, not only how you contact a person, but who you contact, when you contact them, etc., and what you contact them about. So this all sounds really tough, especially the technological part. So this is a lot of what we do at Cluedin. And if anyone who wants to chat with us and get in contact with us afterwards, we feel to explain more of this and talk about how some of the technologies we're using, like Neo4j and machine learning, can help you out with getting a more data-driven sales team. Thank you.
Of course, there's time for questions as well. And I would just say that they're open questions. I mean, the question I would actually ask everyone here is, how many people know what GDPR is? Everybody, fantastic. How many people have a solution for it? It's hard. So I'm going to be really irresponsible now. The bottom line is that the regulation, you cannot technically do it. You can't technically achieve this regulation. So we've been working with a lot of groups. Well, I mean, I'll give you a simple example. If you're using Salesforce, anyone? Yeah? Okay. So if you're using Salesforce and you're integrating into a lot of third-party systems, a lot of people use their CRM as actually their central point of focus, and that's fantastic for the sales team, not necessarily for everyone else. But I mean, Salesforce is a good example of a system that has integrations for everything, right? So it's a pretty good central point, a whole hub of contact and company information. But the fact is that Salesforce and Microsoft and Oracle are actually the only players in the market that are telling other providers where their data is being transferred and where it's stored, which is part of the regulation. If I was to boil this regulation down, and I know a lot of you know about it, but because we specialize in it, we've been talking to a lot of legal groups, we've been talking to a lot of, we've been talking with the principal advisor of the Data Protection Agency. His name's Paul Nemitz. He's a guy from Brussels. And part of the regulation boiled down is the fact that you will need to, as a company, be able to find all information on an individual via their personal identifiers, which is okay. Technically, you could achieve that. The hard part is the second part of that sentence, where you also need to be able to identify information that leads to the identification of the person. And that's something that's very hard to achieve technically. Also, just the fact that integrating with services like Dropbox or Slack, or let's be honest, somewhere in the business, we all have those tools somewhere. Whether it's not in sales, it's in engineering. All of those tools don't actually report to us or Salesforce where their data is being stored and where it's being transferred. Has it ever actually gone over international borders or not? So it's a very hard thing to solve. And this is the irresponsible part of what I'm going to say. And it's backed by the fact that we actually have a lot of legal groups kind of under the table telling us this as well. Is that, to be honest, 95% of companies will just need to show that they're doing something about it. We have a woman dying here, by the way.
Sorry.
That's okay. I know, it's hard. It's a hard problem to solve. But you don't have to get so emotional about it. 95% of businesses will need to show that they're doing something about it. And actually a lot of this can be essentially from a legal perspective, and trust me, I'm just talking through these legal groups right now, so don't take me word by word. But a lot of it's about putting a process in place. So just that when you get these calls from individuals, that you have some process in place for finding and either removing, anonymizing, or exporting the data to them. And that's fantastic, but the problem is how much time that will take for every single business. So essentially what we have these legal firms telling us is that 95% of companies will at least need to show that they've put either some process or tool in place to solve this, and the 5% of companies, and I'm sorry Nordea if that person is here in the audience, but the Nordeas and the Danske Banks of Denmark, they will need to actually do something pretty thorough about it. Of course, when you've got a lot of people from legal groups actually telling you it's a regulation, you know, like the DPA is actually in Denmark is 4 people right now, so it's kind of unrealistic for them to be able to actually process all these audits that they may get. But from what we've been told by the DPA and been told by these legal groups is that the likelihood of you getting audited is more around the fact that if you are given a call via a customer and that they're asking you to delete the data, if you give information back and they actually challenge the fact that, no, I think you actually have a lot more, that's when you're more likely to get audited. So it's a very hard problem to solve. So I thought I'd just clear up the GDPR thing just in case. Did anyone have any questions? Yeah, sure.
You showed that, or you talked about that people should be able to use any tool in big corporation also, or in big organization.
Yeah.
But I'm thinking about that when a company have an accounting system, and then they have a database about their product and all these stuff, they can be locked in a setup that is related to that specific program.
Yeah.
And then you are saying that here we should have the possibility to have all data in one place.
Mm.
So is it then to get rid of these systems because they have not open access to crossing data to other systems, or is it to find a way to actually take something here and take it here and take it to a third program instead?
Yeah, okay, so the question is about the tools that people are using that might be a little bit closed down, or maybe their own ecosystem. How do you share information about between all of those tools? So that's a really good question, and that's the really tough thing, and that's some of the stuff that we're working on in Cluedin and trying to solve. So, it's always going to be possible to pull the 99% of the CRMs and the accounting systems and whatnot we use, that we see companies use, is fairly straightforward to get data from. And then we have really big companies that do really custom setups where you need to route it out in offline to your own server to treat it if they want to have it done on site. So pretty much, the end goal is to find a solution to how we can connect all of these tools. And I think that all of these tools will have an interest in getting connected with each other, right? Because it's not going to change the competition between two CRMs, right? In general, if you're using a tool that's really closed down, and a lot of companies are, that's fine because that's often for security reasons, and usually it's also can be done to get the data out of it. But that's a really tough problem, and that's what we're trying to solve, and we would love to talk more about that. Yeah?
Maybe it's also a little bit about the user interface, because especially salespeople, they don't want to change the system they like or used to work on. So it's pretty much that, I definitely don't want to change. So keep the old system and then make data available, connected.
But yeah, that's a really tough problem. That's the getting the data out of all of the systems. So, including we do like the integration platform, and we have a lot of standard configurations for the public CRMs like Salesforce. That we've done a huge amount of work to do, but we're still missing a lot of the really custom tools and figuring out how we doing that and pulling the data out. That's something we're working on right now, and we have some pretty good ideas about doing it. So.
But the problem you're talking about is actually the buzzword is shadow IT, where a company hands down what tools the company is supposed to use, and unfortunately what sometimes happens is people break out of that mold, and if SharePoint is... No, I don't think anyone from Microsoft's here. If SharePoint is handed down, it's kind of like, you know what, I'm not going to tell IT that I've actually started a Google Drive over here. And I don't really want to talk about our tool too much, and I won't, but our goal is definitely not to move people away from the tools they're already using. It's actually to put them back in it and make it more useful.
Exactly. Our number one goal is to have people use the same tools they will always be using and not have to change. Yeah. Any other questions? Yeah.
Just regarding that, is your goal to then input or integrate the data from the other systems in all the different tools they like to use? Because okay, very good.
Okay. Anything else? Yes.
I'm not sure, but I see like elephant in the room we're talking about changing the tools and changing the salespeople and how they don't want to change. Is there any talk in your mind, in your work, about change management and how you actually work with people when it comes to the systems and unifying the data and all that?
Yeah, that's so interesting, and I would love if I knew a lot about that, but I don't. I'm a way too technical person to talk about something like that. That could definitely be something that would be interested about talking in a future data sales event.
I think the question is about that people hate change, right?
Yeah.
And so the thought of them moving to another tool because it's got all the data in the one place, or moving to the next CRM because it's more modern, it's just not going to happen very easily anyway. It's why tools like Slack don't easily integrate into the enterprise, is because a lot of people don't want to change. And maybe it's a good thing, maybe it's a bad thing, I'm not sure. So what our platform does is essentially, once we pull all this data into one place, we actually push it back to the tool you're already using. So if you use Salesforce, in fact, all the contacts that came from Oscar's Office 365 and Martin's Office 365 and Johan's Google Contacts, that's actually all available now as leads under that account. Which obviously brings up other discussions around privacy and security and putting people's data to use, which is another entire subject. And so I think the way that we try to kind of help not disrupt change is by actually telling everybody, just continue working the tools you're already using. It just means that if we've got data from another system, it'll show up in your system so you can utilize it. So that's how we manage it.
Yeah.
So you avoid change management.
Yeah, that's a good way to solve it. Yeah. We just don't like to talk about it.
Any other questions?
A little comment.
Of course.
Because there's actually also systems or organizations where one thing is to have the data, but people who is looking at the data is locked. Because actually it's important that if this data is misused in some situation, you can go back and see who have actually been looking at these data at a specific time, and then you can get the question, why did you look at these questions or these data? It has nothing to do with your primary job. So why are you in this system? What are you doing? And that is another thing about that. You cannot just take every data and just throw it around or let it go, because one day somebody is knocking the door.
Exactly, and that might be the EU, because that's the general part of the ultimate GDPR. And another part of the old OECD data rules and the kind of guidelines they put out was that, and also part of the data quality is that it should only be used for the intents and purposes that it's fit for, right? You shouldn't be using medical records to call them and sell something. So that's because that's something that happens all the time, and that's illegal soon, probably also now. But that's a huge issue. But that's something that will be helped by the fact that centralizing the data, because you can still limit the access to the data, even though it's in one central place. And the security of something that's centralized is obviously much greater than something that's very spread out. Okay, yeah, this guy over there.
Just a quick kind of random question. You guys are talking about like a very powerful concept, and I'm just wondering, do you have any data kind of supporting it? How much of a difference it is making?
Yeah, we do. So this is not a sales event, so we're gonna talk with you afterwards, and we can tell you all of it. We have a bunch of good documents. We have some good case studies. Okay.
It's about security and migration. The data has to be migrated between different systems rather than just switched and content endanger all the other systems. In your case, for example.
So if you have your data in one place and we're pulling it to all the different tools, that place gets changed, that puts the other tools in limbo because they are missing a data point.
Or gets breached.
Okay, it's breached. Okay, right. Yeah. Well, so the system we're putting in place is very flexible to dealing with these kind of breaches and these kind of missing parts of the tools. Are still very much functioning in the same way on their own as they did before. They just kind of have an extra input layer from the older tool. That would be changed. So your question was that the new tools, will they be compromised if the old tool is hacked?
Will they be?
No, not at all. Because all layers is completely separate. We're pulling it into our database and then putting it in the tool. And all of this is happening through these tools' official API. So that's the most secure way to do it. Yes?
Can you somehow showcase, or like, do you have something to make it more tangible for us, or for me at least, because I get the concept what you're talking about, right? But do you have something you can actually show as well? Like if I, for example, enter the door, I don't know what the product is. I don't really see the benefit.
Yeah.
You know?
We definitely have, but I wasn't really supposed. This is not really me kind of selling our product. This is mostly me sketching out the problems and the way we've used our own product. So I would love to talk with you afterwards about how you use the product and give you a demo. Because what we do is we set up demos for people where we put in the data into our backend and then see how it's treated. That takes 30 minutes, and we can do it remotely. We do whatever. So give us a call and we'll do that.
But I think we're more people who are interested in seeing your product. Couldn't we do a 30-minute demo after?
Do a demo! Alright.
Okay.
You pushed me.
Yeah. Okay, we'll do it after the next talk.
Yes.
Okay, good. Thanks, guys.
All right. Thank you. Any more questions? That's not about Cluedin. Maybe GDPR. Okay. Thank you so much.